The first step in this month is optimizing team weeks and operational scaling. The people who can scale to 10 million and above nail these kind of concepts, and they're not constantly just chasing their tail because they know the structures that need to be right in order to grow to that level. And so keep in mind, when calculating your net profit, the owner must be taking a market rate salary before calculating this profit. You can't say that you're 30% margins, but the owner's literally just taking owner drawings. You need to be having a market-based salary, 150K or whatever, in the business via payroll that we can see as an expense on the profit and loss, and then run all these metrics. So that's super important. And you need to be doing that anyway in order to build yourself out, because you need to hire someone to do that for you eventually. A GM might take that role eventually. So some key metrics: no hiring before 200K revenue per employee. And this makes sure that we're maintaining efficiency before we scale our headcount. So revenue per employee or revenue per full-time employee is one that I love. And it just makes sure we're getting the headcount to revenue levels correct. And a 200K, if you think about like a business, whatever the monthly revenue is, take that, times it by 12. Whatever your monthly labor cost is, take that, times it by 12, and then divide the revenue by the wage bill, and that will give you your revenue per full-time employee. And hopefully that sits at around, we annualize it, hence the times 12, and track that month on month for your business to see how you're tracking. And that'll give you a really good benchmark. But 200K is a good benchmark for agencies. And that will tell you if you've got too many headcount. The next one, we mentioned this a little bit in month 2, but only hire when the existing team is fully optimized and the margins support that expansion. So the team need to be fully optimized, but we also need to have a healthy margin on the P&L before we expand. Otherwise, you're scaling a leaky ship. We need to make sure that we've plugged all the holes and we are as efficient as possible. So those are another key metrics that you should implement and track regularly. Net profit is greater than 15%. Utilization is maxed out or above, ideally 60-70% for the whole agency for the year. The 70-30 rule is a really important one that I think a lot of people ignore or don't get right. Have a look at your overall team, list them out per name, per wage bill, and have a look at the people at the top. What are their salaries as a percent of the overall revenue, as a percent of the overall wage bill for the whole business? The top 30%, we can afford to not be billable, but everyone else needs to be in client-facing roles. And I like my clients to have even the management team doing some billable work. Everyone needs to be a little bit connected to revenue, and it helps obviously subsidize their cost, but I think it also helps keep people sharp. So 70% of the team payroll dollars should be billable staff. You don't want to be too overweight in managers doing the managing, because they are not bringing revenue in the door. It's pretty simple, right? So make sure that 70-30 split is in a good ratio. This one is really tough with like co-founders. When there's 2 co-founders on market-based wages and they've got a GM, we get overweight very quickly. So we need to make sure that we've got enough billable people doing the work who are actually earning. That's where most of the profit margin is made, in that 70%. Negotiate better rates for high-cost contractors. So especially for those highly skilled ones that charge like a wounded bull, see if you can get a better rate if you commit to them, because we need a portfolio of them to keep them honest, and we can't have anyone overcharging us because contractors are very expensive. Using fractional hiring. So I do this to help de-risk any future hires, but before we commit to a full-time, maybe we can test it out with some freelancers. Maybe there's some part-time options. Work out whether we need that full-time position straight up. And another way that we de-risk the hiring conundrum is to make sure we build in a 6-month probation period. So if you're going to think about this new hire, and if it's big, scary hire, make sure we've got a 6-month probation period to give us some ability to manage that downside if it doesn't work out with that person. And then this one here, evaluate whether long-term contracts or in-house roles are more cost-effective. It's just working out, what's going to be better long-term for us. Maybe that contractor is more efficient and they can get it done and we don't need to worry about, all of the other things, the HR problems. Maybe it does make sense. But often the in-house roles is where more margin is. It's just a matter of if you can find someone good enough. And that's where we've got to find that balance of what the market can offer. Optimize team incentives. So bonuses, like I've done this for a bunch of clients, but we might implement a profit share program for certain management team. Shouldn't be tied just to revenue growth. It's the wrong incentive. We need to make sure it's tied to efficiency and to profitability for them. That's a slightly more complex topic, but if you are going to incentivize your team, make sure you're sharing the upside and downside. So if you don't make profit, they don't get a share in that. Cool. Next step, maximize profit per project and the team mix. So we talked a little bit about the team mix here, the 70-30 split. Let's explore this next topic in step 8. So in terms of projects, I mentioned on a previous video, this is where a black hole for a lot of agencies, whether these are website builds, whether these are like set CRO projects or UX projects that come in the door, they often make that month look awesome. But then we have a look at that team or that service line over the whole 12 months, and we realize there's a lot of quiet months. And sometimes we realize even the months where we are busy, there is so many hours being thrown at it that the margins aren't as good as we thought. So we need to be super ruthless with projects, because I'm obviously a much bigger proponent of recurring revenue. It's safe, it's stress-free, we can build a future with that stuff. But obviously project work is still lucrative if we get it right. So project profitability threshold. Every project below 50% gross margins must be repriced, restructured, or discontinued. And that 50% gross margin rule, you remember it from the client profitability as well. It's to ensure that we have enough to cover our overhead and enough to contribute to the net profit. If it's getting more than that, more and more, we're not making any margin on it, and it may not be worth doing. This one here is recalculate true delivery costs. So when you're thinking about the costs of a project, make sure you remember the software, the freelancers, maybe the inefficiencies or the opportunity costs of doing that project. Is it taking a lot of the founder time? And the founder should be focused on other more important things. Make sure you think about those things that are being sacrificed when we chase these shiny new dollars with the projects, because I see often they can sidetrack more important tasks. This is a favorite of mine. Re-engineer underperforming service lines. So cut or reprice anything that drains resources or fails to meet margin targets. So when I talk about service lines there, that might be an entire department. I've had to have hard conversations like that where we're like, hey, all right, let's give the website division 3 months to prove that we have enough consistent work to keep those 3 people busy. Let's have a look at whatever division it may be in your business or that service line. We can add them, but we can also take them away. So make sure that they are meeting our margin requirements, because often one dominant product or service line might be covering up the sins of another one. Everyone needs to earn their spot on the team. Everyone needs to earn their spot on our revenue roster. So make sure that we're cutting or repricing anything that's not, and have a look at it. So I almost think about it like a profit cube. We can look at your overall total company profit. We can look at your profit per service line. We can look at your profit per region. Look at it through a few different lenses, through product, to see where the low-hanging fruit is or the things that we need to focus on to improve. Next one, ensure expensive staff focus on high-value tasks to maximize their return on investment. Similar to month 1 where we said make sure we're charging them out at the right price. Make sure that their time's been optimized. Make sure they're not doing admin or silly tasks that are taking too much time, and get a junior to help them, or automate using AI, some of that stuff. Make sure that the high-paid people are on the highest paying clients or doing their biggest impact work. Make the most of their time, because often the inverse is true. When we have margin problems, we realize the high-paid people are not earning their keep, or we've got them in the wrong areas. And then the last one here is workload balancing. So these are like double negatives. If you can avoid over-servicing on low-margin work, that is going to have a huge unlock for the whole business. And so we need to be prioritizing our most profitable service lines, our most profitable clients, and make sure we get more like that, and cutting and minimizing our downside risk on those other ones. So have a look at the whole overall workload of the team. Where do we need to put the expensive paid people to make sure that they're paying their keep? And for the low paid or the unprofitable ones, can we get the juniors on there and the cheaper staff to help us cover or not lose as much money on those ones? So you can kind of work behind the scenes with your team mix to see where the resources should go there. And then step 9, as a CFO, this is my favorite step, save the best till last, building financial discipline. So have some sort of dashboard, even if it's a very simple one, to track and measure and to keep your profits strong into the future and have the discipline to be looking at it. So if you don't have one, build one. They're fairly easy to do. And you can use fairly easy software like Fathom or Spotlight if you want your own automated stuff that comes from zero. I personally, at the moment, we use my own custom dashboard that I get from zero and run some kind of nice graphs on because I like the customization. It doesn't really matter how pretty the picture looks. It's actually just looking at the simple, most important numbers regularly and having the discipline to act on them. That's the secret sauce. Don't get overawed with the cool latest new Swish web PDF that changes colors. It's like just the key core numbers that are going to move you forward. Look at them, look at their trend over time, and work out what's going to move the needle and actually improve those numbers. It's fairly simple in its basic. And then following on from that, establishing a non-negotiable baseline, actually taking action. Don't bury your head in the sand if your margins are below 15%. You're probably doing this course because you want to improve your margins. If they're not where they want you to be, you need to respect the metrics and the baselines you set for yourself. And if they're not above 15% right now, do we need to cut things? We need to take action on it in order to get there. And don't just bury your head. Actually make some changes. And I've thrown a lot at you over the past 3 months, but hopefully some of these things is the low-hanging fruit, is that golden nugget that you've been thinking about for a while, but me telling you or mentioning it has said, you know what, yeah, this is a common problem. I need to fix that. Dashboard tracking, already mentioned. Some ideas for what you should do there. Revenue per employee, that I already mentioned. Utilization rate, which is not on here, but obviously mentioned it earlier. Where's your team's time going? Billable rate per client, I showed you that graph and looking at billable rate per client. And then cash conversion cycle, which is your days to get paid. One that a lot of founders like and understand is age receivables days, AR days, and that's just making sure that they're not too high and we're collecting our cash as quick as possible, and looking at your age receivables report. Getting your bookkeeping done on time is the most important one, and then running that AR receivables report in zero and looking for anyone who's 2 invoices outstanding or a couple of months outstanding and hounding them, getting on top of them. Profitability targets, here's some for you. 10% is my minimum survival. Anything below that, you're in a very high risk zone of having a couple bad months and might send you out of business if you don't have enough cash. 15% is a solid growth, a good starting point in terms of where you want to be, but 20% or above is a healthy, scalable business. And that is really where we want to be. If you're at 10 or 15, I think you should be itchy and not happy with that. You need to be hitting that 20% regularly. And that is a healthy, scalable business where you have options. You've got cash left over at the end of the month to make some decisions about investing in a new team member or investing in your growth and things like that. But when your margins are too paper thin, it doesn't take much to knock you off your line, and you're going to start making panic decisions as a result. This one, of course, a CFO will tell you this, but it's true. Maintain a rolling cash flow forecast. Having some way to look into the future is super important. So whether that's just a spreadsheet for you, whether you use like Fathom or Spotlight, those kind of things, having some ability to talk about the future, talk about how much cash you're going to have in future months, and workshop some decisions about, do we need to hire? Do we need to fire? What if we increase prices? What if we sell more of this, less of this? It's what the smart entrepreneurs are doing, and I would highly recommend you doing it. And then having some rules around it. So if your cash looks like it's going to hit below a certain target, that cell turns red and hey, we need to take some action. And then you need to go back to maybe some of the earlier months in this course about pricing increases, or those kind of things to find that margin. And then a little kind of war game scenario, regularly look at the impact of a 20% drop, because if that wipes out all your profit, maybe we're running too thin. So if you've got that whale client that's making up 20% of your revenue, what happens next month if they lose, if they leave? How bad would it get? And that just helps you keep as lean as possible and keep that mindset. And then the last one, and this is a classic conservative accountant's approach to debt, because I've seen ATO debt and credit card debt spiral out of control for people. It happens very quickly, and you get into a cash crunch, you can't service it, it balloons. You'll be very surprised how quick it can. I would say avoid funding your operations with debt. Short-term loans should only be used for maybe working capital smoothing. It shouldn't be used to cover ongoing losses or bad business models. If debt's needed to fix cash flow, you need to look at your business model. You need to look at some of the efficiency things that I've been talking about. Solve that first. And a healthy business is one that grows over the long term, funded on its own reserves, which is built from strong margins, which is the whole point of this course. So hopefully I've given you some ideas to implement over the past 3 months. We actually have a bonus month, or month 4, for some other kind of more advanced topics if you're interested. So I'll see you over on that video if you want. But if not, thank you for watching, and I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you found 1 or 2 things that you think might help move the needle for you. Appreciate it. Chat soon.